a whole big thing, like how do you pronounce it? And then I'm like Tira, like tier, and then I'm like, they don't get that. Then I'm like tiramisu, like that. Like come on, like it's really not that hard. Yeah.
Marty, is this
names are really hard? I have a weird name too.
It should be.
Like,
I'm trying to find.
Yeah, I would totally butcher yours.
What's yours? Because I already forgot. Bad memory.
I think I only wrote my last name up anyway. Liaison is the easiest. That's what people call me.
Cool.
My name's Liaison.
Isn't there a share button?
My longer name is Liaison, but
no, there's a links button that you can YouTube link.
What? Cool. I'm Dimitri.
Dimitri, nice
No,
to
it's
meet
that
you.
plus. It's the add people button.
Too. Is your like first IndieWebCamp, or
Yes.
have you been to?
I've actually been to a few over the years, but it's been a long time.
Cool. Your first?
My first, yeah.
Awesome.
And then they told me about the one in Germany.
All right, those are
and I really
now.
wanna go.
Nice. I've been to one. It was probably like a smaller version of this event, so I think this is like a yearly thing.
Mhm.
But I've been to one in San Francisco. Yeah, it's just like a one-day event for a few hours.
This is the ActivityPub session, a short one at IndieWebCamp New York City. Have fun.
Thanks. I'm dropping the link in
the general chat.
So I only know like the title right now.
Yep.
ActivityPub. What's the like the byline?
I would just propose generally ActivityPub as a category because it's something that I've been following a lot and know a lot about.
Can you tell us what it is briefly?
Sure. ActivityPub is a group of different standards for server to server or server to client communication. Basically, a way for computers to talk to each other in a federated way. So sending messages back and forth. The most known projects right now using it are probably Mastodon and PeerTube. But it became a W3C recommended web standard in March, pretty recently.
roughly. No, it was before the beginning of the year because we closed the group in January.
Okay.
I think it was, yeah.
Does
So
it
yeah,
enable?
you probably do a much better job explaining what ActivityPub is.
Does it enable
since you were in
Twitter-like experiences that are a little bit more distributed, or is it more than that? Twitter-like is just one of those things.
It was created mostly with the goal of replicating Twitter-like experience, but it is a generic protocol that is can in theory do more. It also is, it's basically the way to create things that are in the activity streams vocabulary, and activity streams is a format that can describe, it's supposed to be able to describe anything, any sort of actions on the internet. In practice, it is most often used to replicate Twitter-like experiences, where everybody can run their own little thing and then they can all talk to each other. But yeah, PeerTube is a video one, but again, it's also actually very similar because it's the same idea of like you post a thing, it just happens to be a video instead of text. But it's not like Google Docs collaboration style or anything like that. Or it's not wiki style. It's very much like a post, and the post goes to people, and then you can comment on it. You can favorite stuff. So Mastodon is obviously one of probably the biggest implementation of it right now.
Mastodon was the first project to sort of make a usable thing using the standard.
Yeah.
And also sort of like worked with the standard formation, like as it was being made to sort of like make sure it made sense for sort of.
They were,
I mean,
mostly just picked it up after it had been done.
Well, I mean, there was talk going on amongst.
Not as much as there should have been.
Yeah, I very much agree. Yeah. But
so Mastodon is the biggest implementation of it. There's a couple other projects that can also work with it. So if like someone has a Mastodon account and somebody else has an account on some other software, in theory they can talk to each other. I don't have a Mastodon account myself because I refuse to actually like install that software because again, plurality is a big important part to an actually independent web.
For sure.
And if everybody just has to install Mastodon, we haven't really actually solved anything. We've just created the same problems again. So I refuse to install the software myself, but I have a lot of friends who are jumping onto Mastodon and using it and like deleting their Twitter account. And I don't want to lose the ability to talk with them. So instead, I made my website support ActivityPub so that I can keep talking to them. It's just that, like, as far as they're concerned,
a way to link, like, the outside social media, I guess, outlet to
It's-
Mastodon, like Twitter to Mastodon.
it doesn't have anything to do with Twitter. No,
Okay.
like it is completely separate. It does not really connect to it at all.
Okay. It just allows you guys to talk.
But it replicates the experience
Gotcha.
of Twitter. So it's like you have a timeline, you can reply. And yeah, I've decided that instead of jumping on to that software, I don't want to run the software, but I do still want to talk to the people who are using it. So if you can like go follow my website you can go to Mastodon, search for my website, and I show up. You can't tell I'm not running Mastodon. It looks the same.
So like we've communicated a bunch, and we're not using the same software at all. We've communicated a bunch through ActivityPub using totally different software. So just like anyone from any email address can email anyone from anyone else's email address, even if
It's
they're
like
using
the middleman, kind of.
Yeah.
I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
I know my questions probably seem really dumb.
Oh,
no,
no.
it's
I mean, it's just
I know that's kind of like, at least for me, one of the barriers of Mastodon is that there's like all these servers you have to kind of choose from. You can't just like, there's no one server, there's a bunch of them. And in theory, like it's okay which one you pick. You can like pick one and go to a different one, et cetera, but like it's still a bit of a barrier. So like with your solution, you have a website. Does that kind of like help in the sense you could connect to multiple?
So this
servers?
is the thing is that like, so ActivityPub wasn't really meant to do that, but Mastodon was created with the idea of these communities.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was you would first find a Mastodon server that you want to join because of the community that's there, either because you trust the people running it or you like the topics that are being discussed just there. And then sure, they can all talk to each other also, but that's kind of like secondary almost to what was originally like how you are guided to signing up into a Mastodon account. But the spec itself wasn't made to do that.
Yeah.
It was not intended for that. So the big problem that's happening.
Intention reality.
Yeah, the big problem that's happening with Mastodon is that like people will sign up for an account here and then realize that they don't like that server for some reason, and then there is no way to move because your identity is the website you join. There is no separate identity. Like it's just part of that, and that is also why I prefer my website.
Your
is
website actually
its
solves
own
it.
identity.
Your
and
identity
I-
is still your site.
How do you?
there's many different ways to do it.
It's not easy.
It's
the specs are long and confusing.
I mean,
And there are no good actual short summaries of it because the spec is actually gigantic and says way more than you need to do.
there's a
And then there's like this much that actually matters,
Gotcha.
but that's not written down anywhere.
I mean, that's okay. There's lots of different software that is already implemented some form of ActivityPub. Some of it is easier to install than others. Another big one is called Pleroma that a lot of people are using. There's already some services that will like you can pay them a small fee that they'll install it for you on a domain that you own or that you buy for the specific thing, and then all of your presence can be owned entirely by you and managed by you. There's a bunch of different hosts for Mastodon, which is also another. So
yeah, so I have a couple of friends who are like essentially running actual Mastodon the software, but on their own domain name. So again, they solved the problem where they didn't go sign up for somebody else's account, like on somebody else's server. They're running software on their own domain so that there is nobody else in their instance, and they just keep following around people, and then that solves the identity problem because they actually are operating the identity, even though it's like they've signed up for $5 a month hosting from some hosting provider.
Microblog.pub also is
oh yeah, that is the most confusing.
Everyone's
combination of Because there's also micro.blog.
Yeah, I know.
And there's micropub. And there's microblog.pub.
The microblog.pub software is also they like did a pretty full job implementing.
I haven't actually seen it in a while. Is it like pretty full featured now?
Fully, yeah. I've been talking to a few people that are running it, and it's like totally working and like super small and seemingly pretty customizable too.
Kevin Mark says we need to stop calling things pub.
Go tell Dev.
Yeah.
That they need a new name.
Well, at least we're not in a pub right now talking about this.
There's also, I mean, there's a lot of different types of things too. So it doesn't just have to be like a Twitter like experience. So like PeerTube is sort of looks and feels sort of like Twitter, and it also uses the same ActivityPub standard to send video files between servers.
So there's also 2 projects. One is mine and it's not public yet, but Bridgie has done a very good job of connecting the ActivityPub world with the normal web world. And that's a way to essentially use your website, whatever it's written in, whether it's a WordPress site or static HTML, to make it join the Fediverse.
Is that what Greg is using for his? Do you know what?
I think he's tried to set it up. I don't think it's totally working yet.
I mean, he's posting it all on his own, and it's all on his own site, and it looks like the WordPress site.
Yeah,
but like, I've been able to mention him and
it's
follow
worked?
him through.
Okay,
Mastodon.
because he was saying it wasn't working yet. But
maybe he's not getting.
Maybe he's not getting the
mentions.
responses back. But yeah, so Bridgie Fed is the it's basically like offload all the work of the ActivityPub to Bridgie's server, but keeping your website as the identity of everything. Again, solving that problem of you don't need to pick an identity in somebody else's room. You just use your own website as your own identity, but you can still then connect to this network. And I actually wrote one similar idea, bridging a way to offload that ActivityPub work to a separate server, and I'm working on publishing that. I still got some rough edges I need to work out, but I ran it as a prototype over last month.
So this is Fediverse.party, which is a sort of entrance into so the Fediverse is a name for different software and things using ActivityPub.
Okay.
So, for instance, Mastodon is now the biggest part of the Fediverse, but it's totally incorrect to call it Mastodon because, like as we just see, we're coming from 2 different places.
Yeah.
So the whole larger network is being called the Fediverse. These are all different, well, almost all different projects that are specifically communicating with ActivityPub. And so they have different interfaces and different features. But so like anyone can follow each other through all of these different projects.
Through ActivityPub.
And it's using the lower level standard ActivityPub for the messages being sent back and forth. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know what we want to talk about.
I have
here,
an
since
idea.
Yeah.
If you're looking for them, so like I'd be curious to kind of zoom out a little bit and talk about like the motivations. Like so we have Twitter, for example. We have ActivityPub. We have Mastodon. Like, what are the reasons like we might want to not use Twitter and switch something like this? What are the reasons we're like implementing all these protocols? Like some of these are obviously all very NZ-Web related. It's just like you want to have more control, but is there more to it? Like, what are some motivations that are?
So, one, for me personally, not having my identity have any, not having my identity being controlled by a corporation.
Twitter being a corporation, right?
Is very important. Yeah. And being able to have control over all the aspects of communicating with people is it's
that's like
super. I mean, that's like
pretty much about autonomy.
autonomy. Exactly. Thank you for that word. Yeah.
So you can kind of like shape how you see the conversations coming at you. You can maybe filter things on your side.
I mean, being able to have have full autonomy over who you can talk to, getting to decide exactly who you can talk to, and those people also being able to decide, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here.
One of the things I'm really interested in that ActivityPub and Mastodon have prioritized is the ability to choose who can see posts when you post them. So like what we've done in the IndieWeb mostly is started with the assumption that everything is public because it's a lot easier, first of all, and also most people's blogs have just always been public. And there's enough problems to solve when everything is public that like adding in the privacy stuff is just like confounding the issue. But ActivityPub and Mastodon have prioritized that in their development. And there are some things about that work well. And I want to see what we might be able to borrow from that to learn from for doing private posts in the IndieWeb with your own blog. And there's some interesting ways about the way that ActivityPub works that makes it more suited to that. But they have some downsides as well. So it's an interesting space. But that's one of the things I'm really interested about ActivityPub.
Question. So, what's the like history of the origin of ActivityPub? Like, who created the set of protocols? Like, who owns it? Who makes it?
It goes back about 10 years now. I would say Identica.
Depends on how you count.
Well, yeah, I guess. Identica was a project that started basically as a Twitter, like an open source Twitter sort of clone-ish thing by a person named Evan
Prodromo.
I can never say his last name. Prodromo. And it had like a spot in the sunlight. Like sort of in the beginning of Twitter, like before it had even really taken off. And then it morphed a number of times. It was originally written as a federated Twitter like thing, and then that turned into.
Well, so that was all activity streams based, right?
I mean, it's changed a bunch of times. So that was what turned into O status, which ActivityPub is a secondary or like a.
No, not at all. It has nothing to do with O status. ActivityPub has nothing to do with it.
That's
complete different model. 100% different. There is almost nothing in common. So O status is a collection of RSS, Salmon for getting comments back, Pubsub Hubbub for real-time notifications. Pubsub Hubbub works by taking the RSS document and sending the entire thing to subscribers. And there's a hub that manages subscribers. ActivityPub looks nothing like that. First of all, it's all JSON. The vocabulary is no longer RSS, it's activity streams, which has very little in common with RSS. The subscription model is 100% different. Instead of there being the idea of a hub that you publish your content to where the hub is responsible for delivering, everybody in ActivityPub has an inbox.
Right.
And someone can decide to follow you and tell you that they want your posts. And then when you deliver your posts, you deliver directly to them. So there's no longer this hub and distribution model. So basically it has nothing to do with OSATs. It works in a different way in almost every way you can count. Also, it has authentication built in to the delivery, whereas OSATs never did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
the only thing in common is that it has some of the people who created OSATs have been involved in the space over time and were involved in developing ActivityPub.
So yeah, I'm curious, like who's driving the change? Who are those people? Is it like just people in the open source world?
So there was this group that we started in 2014, the Social Web Working Group in W3C, and myself and Tontek and Evan Prodromo and Chris Weber and several others were all part of that. And the group was created to create specs to enable this kind of social networking. And there were a couple of different approaches people were taking, and we were trying to work on figuring out common denominators between them and how we can share between them and eventually come to a single conclusion. We ended up not coming to a single conclusion and instead allowed two different stacks to develop in parallel that solved some of the same problems, some slightly different problems. And ActivityPub was one of those. Chris Weber was the main author behind it. He was the one that wrote Media Goblin and has been involved in the space for a long time. And Evan was definitely involved, but wasn't actually the editor of that spec, but was definitely involved in development of it. But all this work was being done under the W3C working group, the Social Web Working Group, from 2014 until this year. And yeah, we had like weekly phone calls, in-person meetings a couple times a year.
Is the spec still evolving? Like, is there going to be
So the group is shut down. The group had an end of like the groups always exist for some amount of time, and then you have to like petition to start the group up again for the next round. So the group is no longer running, which means there is no ability to publish a new version under the W3C.
Yep.
There are people working on adding things and making different versions.
Yeah. So there is an extension process where some of the work is happening where like the community group that exists can meet, and it's not, you can't publish an official W3C doc, but you can still like do things. So yeah, there's the extension process, but there's also, I suspect there's a lot of things that need to be still worked out, and I suspect there will be another round of either through W3C or not. Something
that you might be interested in is what is it called now? Forge Fed, I think is what they changed their name to. They're working on implementing federated Git stuff into ActivityPub, so that sort of all the ways that GitHub, all the social functions of GitHub could be redone entirely through ActivityPub and standardized. And there's people from GitLab, GitT, and a few other projects all working together right now on this thing called Forge Fed is what they just changed the name to.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the heads up.
And it's like a totally open, I mean, they're still figuring out how to make the spec, but they've already released a bunch of like ideas and sort of like rough drafts.
Is it primarily the issue tracker, or is there more to it?
It's on a Frame-a-Sphere listserv that all the discussion's going on.
What I mean is like, what's the scope of what they're trying to
federated Git? Federated
is it the actual source code, or is there like the discussions around the source code?
Mainly the discussions, but also they're trying to do the source code and the discussions, but they're starting with doing like federated issue tracker first is what is
I still want to do issue tracking just via web engine and microformats because I think it's absolutely possible and will work better overall.
Perhaps,
But that's like so far down on my list of priorities because there's so many other things I also want to do.
Okay. Quick question. I know many of you are like doing the engineering work behind this, and you're kind of exposed to this. Like, what kind of languages are most popular? What is being used most often? And like, is Go a part of any of this?
There's definitely a few people working on ActivityPub Go servers. I've seen like 3 or 4 different projects.
Like what are like the most popular ones?
I mean, those were like specifically just like I don't think they've been used for.
They're like libraries.
Yeah,
right?
they're like libraries so far. So I don't know what is the most popular. I can.
What about like you personally? Like, what are you mostly using?
I mostly write PHP.
PHP.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do write some Ruby now and then, but I don't.
Okay.
Usually.
Pretty old school.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. There's like so much new PHP stuff going on.
But I mean, like
Mastodon's Ruby, Pleroma is Elixir,
Mhm.
Is it really? I had no idea.
Miss Key, I think it's Elixir and something else. Miss Key, I think, is using Node and something else. That's all I know off the. Friendica is PHP as well.
Okay. Sounds like there's a lot of diversity.
Someone implemented it in Rust already.
Of course.
Yeah, there's a crazy amount of different languages
Nice.
in the space.
Okay.
And do you teach you guys like yourselves these languages?
What?
Or, like, do you teach yourself like the languages? Or you?
I don't
learn them
actually
from schools,
program
or-
personally.
Oh, okay.
I follow a lot of things and mostly try to talk about things with different people and spread information and understand the world in various ways.
I do write a lot of code. I don't write code because I like writing code. I write it because I like making things. So
yeah,
that's
I want
kind
to
of
learn code, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it's self-teachable really. Like I'm looking to start Full Stack Academy to do that, to kind of dip my toes.
I mean, I never took any classes, but I also just started doing this ages ago.
So like, I'm not really learning any code or anything like that.
Well, yeah. At the end of the day, it is like a tool to get whatever it is that you want to get done. Yeah. In my case, I'm a software engineer. I've been interested in programming like basically since around high school.
Mhm.
I learned you could make video games, and that's like what really drove me at first. And yeah, I went to university for it and stuff. But like a lot of it is just self-learning. I want to build a project. I try to do it. If I fail, I learn from my mistakes and just spend more time on it. Ask questions. You gain experience. But a lot of it is just like there's a problem and you try to figure it out. But yeah, getting started is absolutely possible. And
Folks, 45 minutes for lunch. Feel free to
nice.
grab food and keep meeting. I'm going to leave the stream running for a bit. There is now coffee, but there's only like dairy creamer. I'm going to go see if I can find some almond milk.
Cool.
And I'll see you later.
Thanks.
cool.
Good food.
Let's grab food.
Cool.
Yeah.
This is Kevin Marks. I'll drop the link to this post.
Here.
Yes.
So what are you
Yeah,
like
yeah,
interested
I
in? What
haven't
is
read that yet.
driving
So-
you?
There's plenty.
I
of
was really
messages
interested
about
in doing stuff in tech. I wasn't sure if I should go the IS route or the IT route, and I went the IS route.
What is the
because-
IS?
So
Stand for?
information systems, it's more
Okay.
like administrative, but because I didn't come with a background in anything tech, I figured that was my best bet. That way I got a more overall thing, but now that I'm in my last year of my master's for it, I'm like, I kind of wish I went from something more hands-on. That's why I'm like trying to do like the Full Stack Academy.
What is that? What is full stack?
So it's basically
I'm okay, I'm tired. Been going full throttle. So, how it is. How was it the rest of the time you guys were there? You did amazing. I'm so sad I couldn't be part of the presentation.
Yeah, you missed that.
I know that was the best part. I got the meltdown instead of the. But yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
From 1912. Are they in here? Did you check in here? Oh, it's your own camera.
So,
This is being used for the indie.
whatever it is.
Yeah, but wait.
Is it Marcus? 2 seconds. Sponsorship too? Wait, both of them? I'm gonna go ask Matt.
Yes.
That one. Ah, she's a.